Hello and welcome back to the FSF podcast. I am Tim. I am your host, and this is your reminder that you are listening and or watching a show that is made by nerds for nerds. Now, our guest today in the nerdatorium is a longtime writer. He's an executive producer, and sometimes he's been an actor, both in front of the camera and behind the camera as a voice actor. Oh, he's also a 5-time Emmy nominee. I mean, that just kind of sneaks in there. But you're very familiar with his work on shows like Family Guy, Resident Alien, which is one of my favorites, and a show that I didn't know that he was involved with, but I absolutely love this show because I love this comedian stand-up, and that's the show Titus, based on Christopher Titus, stand-up comedian. It was a great show. I wish it was still going, but that's a whole nother topic. But we're gonna there's other projects that this person's been available as well. Now it's not about his work, lessons learned and received and or given, project selection, and a few other things. So I am very excited to welcome Chris Sheridan to the FSF podcast. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Thanks, Tim. Happy to be here.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. All right, so Chris, the very first thing I love to do with every guest is talk to them about their origin story for a number of reasons. Number one, I like to know why people do what they do. I like to know what makes people tick, why they got involved in what they do, and why they are what they are. But secondly, I'm a massive nerd, and nerds love a good origin story and like to know what happened with their heroes and how they got there and all that fun stuff. So considering that you are the hero of today's story, I was hoping that you would regale us with your origin story. What made you decide I need to work in the entertainment business?
Yeah, I grew up in New Hampshire, and I had many great teachers in high school. One was a guy named Harry Proudfoot, who was my English teacher and ran the journalism department and sort of helped create my love for writing. So I always wanted to write. I didn't know in what way. I mean, this is New Hampshire in the 80s. So
Okay.
There's no it's pre-internet. There's no access to anything about TV or film. There's just, I think there was something called Premiere Magazine at the time, which I would try to read because it had articles about movies and stuff. But there's really was it's not like now where you can just Google table reads and stuff like that. There was no place really to get information. So I didn't really know about the TV and film industry. I love movies and I love TV growing up, but I didn't really think of that as a place to write until I was in college. In junior year in college, I remember being in an English class and overhearing a woman mention that she had written a screenplay, and it kind of clicked then, like that. It never dawned on me that that was a form of writing. Of course it is. I just never thought that could be something. I was so far away from it. So it clicked then, and that's when I realized that's what I wanted to do. And after college, I moved back home and lived there for a couple of years, and knew by then that I wanted to be a TV or film writer, and actually tried to get into the MFA program at NYU in screenwriting, and luckily did not get in because when I didn't get in, I got in my car and I drove to LA, and I got a job as a PA, production assistant, on a sitcom in 1992 called Shaky Ground, starring an actor who was in I think it was MTV thing. He had played a character named Max Headroom, and his name is Matt Frewer, and he starred in the show Shaky Ground. And I got a job on that, and I was a production assistant, and then I worked my way up to writer's assistant on that show. And I do remember at the end of that year, we got canceled after that first year, but I remember fielding a phone call at the end of that year from someone who was about to graduate from the USC version of the NYU program I didn't get into. And they had gone through and got their MFA from USC in screenwriting, and they were calling, asking me how to get my job. And in that moment, I realized I think I skipped a step because I didn't go and get my MFA somewhere. I just started working. So I was lucky that it worked out that way. And I became an assistant, and I was an assistant for 4 years, and worked my way up to writer from there.
Okay.
That's the short.
That's the short version. Short answers are good answers too. All right. So let me ask you this based on your answer there. So working on Shaky Ground was your first, but do you remember what your first actual
screenwriting that you did was where
Yeah.
you submitted something and said, this is what I would like to put out there?
Yeah, well, yes. At the time, you would write spec scripts. So you'd take a show that you liked on TV and you'd write a script for it, not to ever sell it, but as a sample of what you could do. The first one I wrote was Roseanne, which was a popular show.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And then I wrote the second one I wrote was Larry Sanders Show, which was an HBO show at the time that was popular. And those were the scripts that sort of got me, helped me move forward. By that point, I mean, I was writing those, but by that point I had gotten my way. I'd gotten my first writing job a bit of a different way, which is I was an assistant on a show called Shaky Ground that I mentioned. Show got canceled. Went over to a show called Thea, which was a Castle Rock show for ABC. I was a writer's assistant on that show. That got canceled. And then I became a writer's assistant on a show called Living Single, which was going into its maybe second year or third year. And Yvette Lee Bowser hired me on that show as a writer's assistant, and I had been an assistant for a while, so I had a conversation with her, and she allowed me, in the process of becoming a writer's assistant on Living Single, to also write a freelance script, which is writing a script for the show, even though I wasn't a writer on staff, which used to happen a lot more often back in the day, probably because we did 22 or 24 episodes a year. And so that's more episodes than there are writers on the show. So there were extra scripts to give out. And at the time, the Writers Guild dictated that shows had to give a couple episodes a year to people who were not writing on the show to help people who are out of work and stuff like that, and new writers to try to get in. Okay. So I was able to get a freelance script on Living Single. And then the next year I got another freelance script on Living Single as a writer's assistant. And then my third year on Living Single became a writer. So
all right, cool.
That's another way to get in. I worked my way up as a writer, and Yvette trusted me because of the work I did in the room. She had read my sample Roseanne and sample Larry Sanders, and she liked them, and then gave me a shot as a writer on that show.
Okay. So you've had a variety of shows in your history, and I'm just highlighting a couple that are easy for everyone to find. If they Google your name, they'll find that you've worked on Family Guy. That you worked on Titus, and probably most recently on Resident Alien. But what makes you excited when new projects come around? What makes you, when you look at them, go, man, I really want to be involved with that?
That's a great question. It's different for everybody. I think a lot of times, depending how you're raised and how we are in this industry, it's sort of feast or famine, and usually famine. So I think we're taught to never turn down work. But there's a big difference between taking a job that you feel like you have to take and one that you get really excited for. And it's really rare. There's a lot of TV out there, and a lot of it's great TV, but it's not all for you. And it's really rare to find a show that really clicks with you. And when I get into those opportunities, I try to jump at it. Now I'm in a different position than I was in when I was, moving my way up and staffing, and you don't have a lot of choices then. I may not have a lot of choices now. We'll see what happens, but at least I'm in a position to maybe create shows. So now, it's those ideas that either you get or you hear about or someone brings to you that you think about, and sometimes it's immediate. Like it was like when I read when Amblin Television sent me the Resident Alien comics to see if I wanted to adapt those. I read it and I immediately knew what that could be. I had a thought in my head that could be, through the eyes of this alien, a great way to tell the story about what it's like to become human and what it means to become human. So that popped in my head immediately. Like the comics were so great, and I knew I had to sort of change some things and adapt them, but I had a really strong sense of what that show could be immediately. Sometimes it doesn't happen that fast. Sometimes it's an idea that you come up with. Writers have ideas all the time, and they're all bouncing around in your head, and they start falling away and disappearing because they don't excite you anymore. But the ones that stick around are the ones that you're passionate about for some reason. And, I've found in my career definitely ideas that don't go away, and you're compelled to finally write them and try to make them into something. So, and the specifics of that to me are kind of what I found with Resident Alien, which is a character story with a bit of a twist, a bit of a hook, something a little bit larger than life, but trying to ground the show as much as possible and allow the light of that special thing that's part of it. And in the Resident Alien case, it's about a bunch of normal people in a town, and the special thing, of course, is that an alien comes down and interacts with all of them. I love that special thing because it reminds me, and certainly when I'm writing it, but even watching stuff like that the world is magical, and I love the sense of that. I love a lot of Spielberg stuff for the same reason. Like there's magic in the world, and if you can tap into that, I think that's a lot of fun.
I love that answer because I think that's so in line with everything that, as a viewer, how I see that show.
Yeah,
I see that as tapping into the humanity and the magic of who and what people are, and learning the humanity of and who and what people are, and I loved that aspect about it. I mean, having Alan Tudyk run, be Harry doesn't hurt anything, but
yeah, he's unbelievable. That's
absolutely.
We got real lucky with the entire cast. I mean, you go your whole career. I've written pilots before. I've shot pilots before, and I think the difference, because I think there's a lot of good scripts out there that writers write. The difference between a show that moves forward and a show that doesn't, or a show that moves forward and limps ahead, or a show that moves forward and really drives forward and is great. Sure, it's the writing, and that's where it starts, but you have to have a cast, and you have to have a great cast. And a cast, is not just finding great actors. It's finding great which is also, by the way, hard, because you're dealing with the studio system that has a concept in their head of who they want on their network. And it may not be the best actor, it may be the way they look and stuff like that. So it's finding the best actors, sure. But the biggest wild card is getting the best actors and having them have chemistry with each other, which is something you really don't know until you start shooting. You can try to match them up when you're casting and like, oh yeah, that works. But we got so lucky in the Resident Alien process, certainly getting Alan, but getting every one of those actors at a place in their career where they're not so well known that the viewers attaching labels to them. You hire Mark Wahlberg into a show, people have a concept in their mind of who Mark Wahlberg is. There's an advantage of hiring people who aren't household names yet. And not only were we able to get these incredible actors, but they have such chemistry together. And watching that unfold over the 4 seasons and writing to the chemistry that works was such a gift. It was, I honestly don't know if I'll ever be lucky enough to have that gift again, because it was really special.
Okay. Well, that's actually a great segue into another question I had for you, because I mentioned in the intro that you've been an Emmy nominee, I think 5 times. There's a British award that you were also nominated for. So, accolades, attaboys are always great. Nominations are wonderful. They're a great indication of critical acceptance of your work from your peers and writers and critics and all that type of stuff. But I also have seen on Instagram and other socials actors from Resident Alien like Sarah Tomko and Sarah Podemsky, Alice Wetterland, all praising your work, your skill, your ability. How does it make you feel as a writer, as an executive producer, to know that the ones you work with look at you in that light?
I mean, it's everything. That matter. I'll be honest. The first time I was nominated for an Emmy, it was on Family Guy. It meant, you're in TV, and this is the Emmys, and this is going to be great, and we're going to win. And then you don't win, and then the second time you don't win again. And then after a while, you start realizing that it's all kind of bullshit. Like, does it matter? There's so many different factors going in. To be honest, I think if Resident Alien had come out on HBO instead of Sci-Fi, and nothing against Sci-Fi, I had an incredible.
No, I know what you mean.
Supportive. Yeah, but they're a small cable company, small cable network. A bad show on HBO is going to get Emmy nominations. If this show was on HBO, I think we already would have gotten Emmy stuff. We're not going to get it on sci-fi. It's just too far of a hurdle. No one knows it exists. And that's fine with me.
That's fair.
Because if I had a choice between, being on a show, any other show, and going through the process that these shows go through, a Succession and stuff like that, when brilliantly written, brilliantly acted, and I'm sure they have their share of dealings with HBO there, and they win Emmys and all that stuff. I wouldn't trade what we had for anything, because on the creative side at USA Sci-Fi, they were so supportive that they let us do kind of whatever we wanted to do. I creatively got to do what I wanted to do without a lot of pushback. I was very collaborative with them. If they had notes, I'd listen and we'd talk about it, whatever. But if I didn't want to do it, they wouldn't force me. On a very, very rarely, maybe twice in the whole series, did I not want to do something and they pushed and I had to do it. So that was such a gift. So going back to these awards, having someone hand you a statue, and we did win. We won the Hollywood Critics Association Best Comedy Award, which was nice. Of course, it's nice. It's nice to know people in the industry are respecting your show. But there's nothing more important than the people you work with respecting what you do. And there was so much respect on that set that I've seen the interviews. Anytime anyone, Alice or Alan or Sarah or anyone says anything good about the writing that we did, myself and the writers on the show, it's the most important thing in the world. I would take that over a statue any day, and I'm lucky to have it. That's what the show was. It was a group of artists working together, listening to each other, trying to make the best show possible, always respecting each other. If I had something I wanted to do and they didn't like it, I'd talk to them about it. And I would say, trust me, I have a vision for this, and do it. And they would. And if I want to do something and they push back and say, one of the actors says, Sarah Tomko comes to me and says, I don't think Asta would say this or do this in this moment, and here's why. I'll really listen to her, and all of them, because they're all smart actors. And I'll listen to what they have to say, because, as a showrunner, you have 1,000 things you have to deal with, and 1,000 character moves and all the story moves and stuff you have to do. Each one of these actors is really focused on their own character. So if one of them says this doesn't feel right, I'll sit down and listen to them and let's talk about it. And 9 times out of 10, they're right, and I'll make an adjustment. So that's the gift. It's the gift of respect. I respect the hell out of all of them, and I'm glad that they respect me. And that to me is, like I said, that's the award.
I think that's a great answer. Very, very good. Okay. Now I think we may have already touched on this a little bit, but I'm gonna dip my toe back in just to make sure that I understand. By understand, I mean I understand your answer and where I think it is and all fun stuff. Because this is a question that I asked Sarah Podemski, and I know you saw that interview, so I'm curious to see what your take is on this. Now, Resident Alien concluded its run. The series is over. But one of the things I most appreciate about that show is, like we talked about, was the look at humanity from a different lens, a different POV. But what do you feel is the best lesson that Resident Alien helps teach its audience? And is there a lesson that it taught you?
Yeah, I mean, there are so many lessons. I mean, and I do remember that conversation with Podemski. It's okay to be different is a huge one. You don't have to be an outsider if you live in a world where everyone's accepted. And what was most important to me was trying to tell this story about not just this alien who's an outsider, this alien who is different, but all the people in that world who in their own way are a little bit different, but they found each other and they support each other, and they forgive each other for each other's mistakes, and they're there for each other when they need each other. And what a wonderful place that might be if the world was like that. And if we worked a little harder to not judge, and to look at the good in people, and in the same way that Harry acts different and the people in our world sort of, learn to accept him for who he is. If people watching the show would get the same feeling and get that feeling of warmth, and suddenly the person down the street who looks different skin tone, you know, prays to a different God, you know, they're not that different.
Mhm.
We're all the same.
Right.
And if that could make one person go down the street and knock on the door and say, "Hey, we haven't met. I just want to say hi," that's everything to me. So that to me is the biggest lesson. And as far as what did I learn lesson wise, I think I went into it having this belief of humanity, at least this hope that we can be
Okay.
good enough to be these people. I don't think that changed, but in watching how the show has affected people, and believe it or not, I was able to see this on Family Guy as well, because comedy is a bit of a cure-all for people, and
For
a
sure.
lot of people came up to me on Family Guy, knowing I run on Family Guy, and thanked me for making them laugh and everything. So that was important to me, but on Resident Alien as well. I mean, what I learned is that it does matter. It does matter what you put out in the world. What I learned is that TV isn't just bullshit. It isn't just something that people do to zone out. It really can
Right.
change people's lives. It really can make people, it can add a layer of positivity and happiness to somebody's life. And I want to always be able to do that.
All right. Very good. I like those answers. Yeah. I think that far too often we overlook the importance of what we do and what we're putting out into the world
Yeah.
and how that affects humanity around us. So I like that answer. I think it's very important that we're mindful of how we portray ourselves in the world
I
and
think
how we're
so. And you don't have to have a show that thousands of people watch.
absolutely
It's what you do when you go outside in the morning, and you pass someone on the street, and trying to live in a sense of
yeah,
positivity, give them a smile, and you don't know where that smile is going to go. I think it was in the final
agreed.
episode where Harry references that it's the small things, the tiny moments in life are the ones that matter, and doing good for people, and
Yeah,
being a good person, and trying to make people's lives better. And every individual person can live that way, and I think should live that way, and would be happier if they lived that way. And so hopefully the show would rub off on people a little bit.
I think so. I think so. So okay, yeah, because I think it's to me, and I think I mentioned this with Sarah as well, though. This show in a lot of ways, I see it, very much so like the Ted Lasso series, where there's this undying positivity underneath the surface,
Yeah.
and it's so invigorating to watch shows like that where there's this positivity about humanity and the people around them and the lessons, and I love the fact that there's lessons being taught on Resident Alien, but they're not. It's not the type of lesson where you're like, "Oh God, this is here we go again. We're getting this shoved down our throat." It's just a very gentle way to show, "Hey, we can be like this."
Sure. I mean, that's hard to do. And I do think there were moments that we maybe pushed a lesson a little too hard. I never wanted to
Sure.
stand on a soapbox. But in this show, just the nature of it. I mean, you have
Hmm.
an alien learning things for the first time like a child. So it doesn't so when Harry says something like, humans have all the love they'll ever need inside of them, it sounds so hokey. And it sounds so soap like you're just standing
Right.
up preaching that. But because it's coming from Harry, and because it's being voiced by Alan, who's brilliant, it's coming from Harry in this voiceover that we've gotten used to now, him talking about his experience. It
Right.
doesn't feel hokey for some reason, and part of it is Alan's performance, but part of it is just the character. He's just someone who's learning how to be human. So he's having a real moment where he's talking about what he's learned. And it doesn't really feel, hopefully, that you're jamming, this thing down people's throats. It just feels like the show is being, and if people watch it and want to take that from it, then that's a good thing. But I never really wanted to tell people how to live, what
Right.
choices
Yeah.
to make. But I did want to show them that there's happiness in mutual respect and love and kindness, and
Awesome.
maybe that would rub off on them.
Okay. All right. let's change gears a little bit here. Um, Now, I look at life and from the aspect of there's a couple of ways that you can learn how to do things. You can dive head first and just trial by error and find out firsthand, see how it's going to work out. Or you can take the advice of someone who has already navigated the issue at hand and see how that works out for you.
Mm-hmm.
So, in your career, what's the best that you received, and how do you pass that forward?
Yeah, probably the best advice I ever got in my career was to not creatively to not chase the industry. And it took me a long time to sort of learn that and to follow that. There's a lot of times in this career you're told what they're looking for. We're all, trying to create shows and trying to come up with ideas and everything. But we're told this is what they want. And so the second you follow that, you're no longer coming up with an idea, you're trying to fill a slot. And that's, to me, the death to creativity. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't do that sometimes, or you should never do that. Sometimes you have to do that. You need work.
Mhm.
This is what they want. I'll do this. But if you want to write from the purest place of creativity, it's got to center in here, in your heart, in something that means something to you. And you should write something you love, something you care about, with characters that you love and that you care about. And I think you have to write from a point of, I'm going to write this, and if nobody buys it, I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you can stay with that, and it's hard to do, and I failed at that many times early in my career. It's hard to do because you have so many voices coming at you saying, no, change this, change that. But if you can do that, you may not sell it, but at least what you'll end up with is something that you love and something that's true and authentic. If you follow, the business and try to write what you think they're looking for, you also might not sell it. Probably won't. I mean, it's a long shot to sell anything. But then you've got to live with the wonder of, well, what if I had written what I wanted to write instead of what they were telling me to write? Would that have gone forward? The advantage of writing what you believe in and what you want to write is that when you finish, you'll always have it. And like I said, it's authentic, it's true. And whether they buy it or not is up to them. You don't have any power over that. So it's a moving target. By the time you write, they're looking for buddy comedies. By the time you finish your buddy comedy, they're looking at father-daughter shows now. They're even off that, So right from the heart.
Right.
I mean, that's what everyone always says, and you're like, okay, yeah, sure, but not now because they're looking for buddy comedy, so I got to do that. And it takes you a couple times of dropping that ball before you start thinking about it. When I did Resident Alien, when I was writing it, I was very aware that it was mashing together a bunch of different tones, and I just had done so many pilots, and I had chased that what the business was looking for so many times. That with this one, I said, I'm just going to write it. I'm just going to write it as if I was the viewer and what I would want to watch. And that's what I did, And I wrote it as if I was the only viewer, that's fine. And I think the advantage of that is that what you end up with is something that feels a little bit specific and a little bit different and has a particular point of view, which in this landscape, when there's so much television on now, it's helpful having something with a point of view, so it doesn't just feel like everything else on TV.
Yeah.
So that's one piece of advice that I finally learned how to take.
Okay. All right. I like that advice. Right. Write from your heart. Write something you can be proud of. Something you would be interested in.
Yeah.
Okay.
And leave the whether someone's going to buy it or not up to them. All you have control over is putting the letters in the right order. That make you happy. That excites you. Write that, and then they want to buy it, they can buy it. If not, write something else.
All right. Very good. All right. So the question I asked at the beginning in the origin story, like I said, I like to know what makes people tick. And I go out and I look at different interviews that they've done. I look at social media and all trying to understand who you are as a person and all those things. But this question also helps me do that. And I call it suggestion time. What are you reading or listening to that you think everybody else should know about?
Wow. Suggestion time.
Yeah.
This is so funny. So many times these questions stump me. I'm doing like behind the scenes stuff on whatever Resident Alien or whatever show I'm on, and they ask the simplest questions like, "What was your favorite time on set?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I don't remember." So suggestion time. I am currently reading The Martian Chronicles, which
Okay.
is one of many books I was supposed to read in high school, and I read it as a kid, but then I had forgotten it, and I know I was supposed to read it in high school, and I know I didn't, and so
Okay.
I'm catching up on it now. I was a big I love the Illustrated Man. When I was younger, I used to read a lot, and I went through a period of adolescence and teenage years where I stopped reading.
Yeah.
But I do remember as a kid loving those sci-fi things, and so yeah, Martian Chronicles I'm reading now, which is fantastic.
Yeah. Nice Ray Bradbury jam.
I just read a book called The Overstory, which I think a lot of people have read, which is a beautiful book that delves into the interconnectedness of humanity and trees, which is pretty fantastic. I think you froze. Is that me?
No, I
Okay.
see you just fine.
Okay. And then the other question is, what am I listening to?
Sure. It can be reading or listening, but if you have something you're listening to and you want to throw it out there, you can.
So listening
have
to like an audiobook?
Audiobook, band, musician, whatever.
Yeah. My daughter turned me on to a band called Rabel, which
Okay.
I put a couple of their songs in the fourth season. They've got some great music. There's a band I've been listening to called The Autumn Defense, which is a guy named John Sterrett, who's the bass player of Wilco. Started
nice.
this with another member of Wilco, and they have some fantastic stuff. Podcasts, a couple podcasts. I like my Crime Junkie podcast.
Sure.
There's a great podcast for writers called Script Notes, which I listen to. And I'm listening to a podcast called The Telepathy Tapes, which someone just turned me on to, which is fantastic.
I think that's the one that Sarah told me about.
Oh, maybe.
Was it Sarah?
I don't remember.
I don't remember. But somebody told me about that one and suggested I look at it.
Worth listening to, yeah.
Yeah. It was either and it wasn't Sarah. I think it was. I know who it was. Okay. So yeah, it wasn't Sarah, but it was another person.
Told you about it. You should check it out.
Yeah, this is the second person inside of a month who I think has told me to check out.
It's pretty cool. It's another. It's right down my alley of like, oh yeah, life is a little bit magical, which is kind of nice.
All right, cool. I will make note of those and I will check those out myself. Especially the bands. I'm kind of curious about the one from the Wilco guys.
Yeah.
All right, Chris, we have entered the time of this show where I need to ask you a silly question. And it's a little bit spoiled because I know that you already know what the silly question is, but I'm going to preface it anyway for the people listening, playing the stay-at-home version of the game who have not heard this before. So for those of you who don't know, my team member Kathleen was out and about with her daughter, and somebody asked her 6-year-old daughter this question, but not Kathleen. And Kathleen was offended because she thought you should never age out of this question. And so that question is, Chris Sheridan, what's your favorite dinosaur?
So I knew this question was coming, and I was like, I'm going to give you two dinosaurs. I'm going to give you what really my answer would be. And then because what I did was I'm like, well, I can't just, I'll tell you, I like the Brontosaurus. I'm a fan.
Nice. All right.
It's like a dinosaur cow to me. They're just there hanging out, eating foliage. As a kid, I remember wondering if they tasted like cow. I don't know. Were there? I mean, in the Flintstones, there were probably Brontosaurus steaks,
Brontosaurus burgers, yeah,
and burgers and stuff. Is it like bison? I don't know. I'm a fan of the Brontosaurus. It's not getting in anyone's way. It's just hanging out, long neck,
living its life, doing its thing.
But then I was thinking about it. I was like, well, I can't just say Brontosaurus. It's so boring. So then I was like, well, what? So I did a little dinosaur research to figure out, instead of, if I wanted to be interesting, what would I say? And there is a dinosaur. Again, this is cheating. So my official answer is Brontosaurus. There's a dinosaur called the Oculudentavis, which also might be just a lizard, but I think it's a dinosaur. And I like that because it's only like 3 inches long. So I figure if I could have a dinosaur that was like 2 or 3 inches long, and you could just put it in your pocket, and you can be like Brooks in Shawshank and just feed it like a worm, in your pocket, and it's a dinosaur, that would be the greatest thing in the world.
Pocket dinosaur.
It's like a pocket dinosaur. So
I love that you are the first person in 260 some odd interviews to do research for this question. I think that's fantastic.
Well, you know what's coming, and I was very self-conscious of. I don't know. I like the Brontosaurus, and I guess I think I own it.
I think both are great answers, and but like I said, I love the fact that you did research for that.
Research. I'm like, I got to come up with something interesting for Tim.
That makes me unquestionably happy. I'm just there's a sense of happiness here that I can't really.
I love that. I love it.
That's just thrilling to me. All right, very cool. Well, Chris, just thank you so much for being on the FSF podcast today. Where can our listeners and viewers go to find out more about you, your work, anything you've got coming up, man?
This is more boring than my Brontosaurus answer. I got nothing. I'm trying to stay off social media. I would say Twitter, but I don't go on Twitter anymore. I don't do it. Honestly, sometimes I'll go on Reddit. And my name on Reddit is Chris Sheridan, RA. So that's pretty much, I would do that to sort of do a couple Ask Me Anythings and stuff, and I'll go creep on the Resident Alien message board. But that's it. And as far as what's coming up next, as you know, Resident Alien finished in August.
Yep.
I do think someday there probably will be a movie. I like the thought of that, but there will not be another season of the show, sadly. But I'm ready to do something new as well, and I'm excited. I was on Resident Alien for 10 years, so I'm excited to creatively do something new, and I am writing something new right now, which I can't tell you.
Perfect. Well, understandable. That makes sense.
We'll see.
Okay. And so yeah, I'll make sure that we note that you're Chris Sheridan RA on Reddit down in the show notes down below.
That's about I don't know. I wish Twitter didn't become, or X didn't become what it's become.
The cesspool of humanity that it's become. Yes.
It's just so dark now. Like every time I try, now and then I'll go on and like to see if someone has said anything about the show, and it's just dumpster fire. Like, not the people watching the show, but you just come across.
Oh, I get what you're saying.
Awful stuff.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
No joke.
No, I get it.
Just not my thing.
Yeah. No, we left for the podcast, and even personally, I left Twitter about a year ago, and it's just I haven't looked back. I tried a couple other social medias, but I'm pretty much just sticking with Instagram and Threads at this point. So
yeah, I'm on Instagram, but it's private. Because I'm not trying to have a bigger presence on social media. I'm trying to have a smaller presence and trying to stay away from it. I think the cell phones are destroying humanity, and we're all addicted to them. And I think things were better in the 90s when people could talk to each other. So that's my old man. My old man standing on the porch. You kids these days,
get off my lawn.
Exactly.
Oh. Shakes the angry fist. I love it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I'll put down a link for your IMDb page as well. So as things get announced that you're tagged to, they can see that on there as well. Great. So we'll put those down in the show notes, and our listeners can check those out there. And hey, speaking of checking things out, guys, did you know that following our show on YouTube is the most important free thing that you can do today? That's right. It costs this many $0 to follow us here on YouTube. So, if you would, go ahead and click that like and subscribe button. That's going to be more help than what we can really tell you. And go check out Chris's work. Now, if you've already watched Family Guy, Titus, The Cleveland Show, you've watched Obviously, Resident Alien, we've been talking about that. And there's a few others. If you go to his IMDb page, you'll find all of his work there, except for the new cool unnamed stuff that's coming up. So you'll just have to pay attention and see what drops next from Chris Sheridan. But check out his work as well. So thank you to everyone for watching and or listening to the FSF podcast. Thank you to Chris Sheridan for making time for us this evening. And may the force be with you as you continue to live long and prosper. Goodbye.
Copyright 2025 FSF Podcast. Reference to any specific product or entity mentioned on this podcast does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by FSF Podcast. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. If you have any questions about this disclaimer, please contact us via email at info@fsfpodcast.com.